Now in 2025, for a fashion shoe, this could probably get by. For a basketball shoe, when I put my podiatry goggles on, this just isn't it. So Nike, unfortunately, you've fumbled the ball with this one, and let's find out why these can be a little bit problematic if you decide to take them on court. So when designing a shoe like this, I still don't know why they make them so tapered. But one thing Nike done with the A1s here in the upper is they made them breathable. The lacing eyelets, just your regular stitch in, but they've got two tabs here on the inside of the shoe that actually reinforce the medial aspect of the shoe, which is quite nice. The tongue thick enough, good amount of padding so you don't get any sort of irritation when you crank down on the laces. But we'll talk about the fit and the slippage problems in the fit section. But overall, quite breathable. There's only two problems, and it's the pinch points that you get on either side. So my foot was quite sore after the first few wears here on the outside, and I've got a very normal width foot. So anyone that's normal width or wider is going to have a little bit of an issue in these shoes, especially with this type of material. And the big toe as well can cause some pinch point. But potentially wearing some double socks, I don't know if that's going to be enough, but these are very narrow shoes, especially in the midfoot and the forefoot. So consider that when you're buying the A1s. Now, when you're after a lot of cushion and a plush feel, the A1s do that quite well, but it's at the expense of the court feel and the weight of the shoe itself. Now that cushioning can make you a little bit unstable, especially when you're making quick stops or side to side movements. But when you have that clunky feel already from the uppers, plus an unstable cushion, it could be a recipe for disaster, especially if someone's a little bit heavier and needs a nice stable base. The cushion in this can feel a little bit unstable just because of how plush it is. Now it's got Cushlon 3.0, which does feel quite nice, but I don't think it's suitable the way they've set it up in this shoe for a basketball situation. But overall, look, it does feel quite nice when you're not really making very sudden or big movements, but it's a little bit problematic when you're making quick stops, fast jumps. Anything that's sudden can be a little bit unstable in this shoe, so keep that in mind. Overall, look, you could probably take out the insole in this and put something a bit more stable, like a carbon fiber or polypropylene device inside to get a bit more rigidity out of it. Those two together might create a bit of balance in that, but it's just something to keep in mind if you're a player that's used to getting that court feel or a low to the ground feel. These don't have that, unfortunately. Now, for a shoe that doesn't have a lot of redeeming qualities, the traction actually performed quite well. Now, considering the actual type of rubber that they've used here, it feels quite hard, but I know for a fact once you get on an outdoor surface, this is just going to get cleaned out. So keep it on an indoor surface. It's not the hardest rubber, but the good thing is that it's got deep grooves, which is nice. So it does pick up a bit of dust, so I did have to clean every so often just to maintain that bite. But overall, for what it is, the traction is quite nice. Once you've got a nice aggressive lateral flange like this, plus the upper being the material that it is, it can cause some problems on the outside of the foot, especially if you've got a tailor's bunion or you've already got some issues on the outside of the foot. This is really going to aggravate that area. So keep that in mind with this sort of setup. Actually, I like the traction, and it's nice to see that they've used deep grooves because there's a few issues with this type of shoe. Now, the A1s had a little bit of heel slippage issues. I actually think there's a good amount of cushioning there, but because there's no runner's knot, that shoe collar doesn't come in nicely. So even though you do pull down quite hard on the laces, there's still issues with lockdown. Now, the tongue itself, the gusset that's underneath, starts about halfway through the shoe. So you don't get really good lockdown from the midfoot to the ankle, but from the midfoot down to the toes, the lockdown's quite good. It's probably a bit too good because of how narrow it is. I just wish they extended that gusset a little bit further back to get a bit more lockdown. But I did have some issues, as you can see here. There's a bit of slippage when you're putting some force through that forefoot. The shoe does want to separate from the foot a little bit. So that's one thing I noticed about the fit. I would probably suggest staying true to size. Just because you might have issues in the forefoot but there's still the issue of heel slippage. So it's going to be real tricky to get sizing down right in these type of shoes. So I will suggest going into a store, popping them on and trying them around the store, maybe with some basketball socks, just to get a real good feel with how that sizing is for you. Now, who would like a shoe like this? I think if you're a casual player and you're looking for a good looking shoe, potential option, but just keep in mind if your foot is a larger foot or a bit wider, these are going to be really irritating initially. When you break them in, it does loosen up a little bit, but you're still going to have those pinch points out the sides. And if you're playing a full game, that's going to really add up as you're playing it. But for someone that's a casual shoot around, someone that wants a little bit of cushioning and has a narrow foot may enjoy it. Maybe a sensor that's a little bit heavier with a narrow foot potentially would enjoy this. I just don't think if you're looking for quick, nimble movements, good court feel, that this is a suitable shoe. Now, you know, at the end of the day, for someone that wants something that looks good and performs well, I think for this price point, there's definitely better shoes out there. But, you know, for her first signature shoe, AJ, you know, she's done pretty good with the aesthetic of the shoe. I just think functional wise and from the perspective of a podiatrist, there is some significant issues with this type of shoe. Now, I don't think I'll be recommending this shoe to many people, but for those of you that are curious about it, take yourself into a store, get your basketball shoes or socks with you, and try them on. Walk around just to get a feel for them, because I really think that this shoe can cause a bit more problems than benefits in the long run. So just keep that in mind. Here in Australia, it sits at about 220, so quite expensive. And at that price point, there's a lot of options that I think are superior to the A1s. So Nike, I hope you guys improve on this in the next shoe. I've left the playlist up here that you guys can check out some of my other reviews. And if you have any specific shoes in mind that you want me to review, leave them down in the comments below. See you guys in the next video. Peace.